Welcome, friends. Uh, in this session, we are going to discuss about one of the important user-defined construct in C programming language, and this is being called as arrays in C programming language. In this session, we will understand what are arrays in C, how to declare arrays in C, how to initialize the elements of arrays in C, and finally, how to make the use of arrays while writing programs for real life problems. As you know that you are viewing this session on my YouTube channel, Learn with Prakash Khanale, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. So let us first of all understand what we mean by an array. In programming languages, you know that we can make the use of variables, and one variable can be assigned with one value. So you can say that in generally, a variable can store only one value. But many times in real life, you will find that we have to deal with large set of numbers. And in such a case, you need to make the use of large number of variables within a program. Say, for example, if you have the marks scored by the students in different subjects, then you will find that, say, for example, there are 7 subjects for each student. And if there are number of students, then there will be a huge collection of numbers. So if we use a different variable for each value, then you will find that in a program, there will be large number of variables. And handling of these many large number of variables becomes very difficult. So the most convenient way to deal with the situation is that you use only one name for all similar data values. In C programming, you will find that it is possible that we can recognize all similar data elements by one name only, and it is being called as an array. So we can say that an array in a C programming language is a fixed size collection of homogeneous data elements. Homogeneous, it will stand for similar data elements. Say, for example, when we have an array of only integer numbers, then we know that all the elements of the array will be of integer numbers only. Similarly, we can have an array of names, or we can have an array of float numbers also. You will find that there are basically two types of arrays. In C programming language, the first type of the array is being called as a one-dimensional array or 1D array. And another array that is being called as a multi-dimensional array. One-dimensional array, you can say that it is a sequential collection of the elements. So one-dimensional array is also called as a list. So whenever you prepare any list, suppose you are going to the market for purchasing few things, and in order to remember them, what we do is that we write all those elements that we want to purchase, or all those items that we want to purchase on a list. So whenever we write such list, then that list can be called as a one-dimensional array. Many times you will find that the one-dimensional array can be called as a vector also. In C, it is possible to make the use of one-dimensional array, as well as it is possible to make the use of multi-dimensional arrays. So multi-dimensional array can be a two-dimensional array, or it can be a three-dimensional array. But in C, you will find that there is no restriction on the number of dimensions. You can have as many dimensions as per the requirement of the program. But normally, people prefer to use only one-dimensional and sometimes the two-dimensional arrays. So two-dimensional array you can say that it is like a table. Suppose you have been given a table of numbers or a table of names, then you can say that it is a two-dimensional array. Sometimes you will find that the two-dimensional array can be called as matrices. So let us first of all understand what we mean by one-dimensional array and how we can deal with the one-dimensional array in C programming language. Now we know that in C programming language, whenever we are dealing with any variable, then we need to declare that variable before we actually make use of it. Similarly, when we want to use one-dimensional array in any program, then that variable need to be declared first. Now, how to declare a one-dimensional array? The syntax for the declaration is like this. Initially, you have to write down the data type of the array, means what type of elements are there in the array. Then you have to write down the name of the array, because every array will have a name, and that can be any valid variable name. And then in the square bracket, you need to mention the size of the array. So size of the array, you can say, can be any positive number. Say for example, if I declare an array A, so A is the name of the array, and this is an array of which all the elements are of the type integer. Means it is basically a collection of integer numbers, and there can be up to 6 numbers. So it is basically a collection of 6 integer numbers. Then this array can be declared in the C program like this: integer A in the square bracket 6 and then semicolon. You will find that this can be a graphical representation of this array. This is a one-dimensional array A with 6 elements. So you will find that the sequential memory locations will be reserved for this array. The first element is A0. So this is the index. 0 will indicate what is the position of the element. Normally it will start with 0. A1 will be the second element. A2 will be the third element. A3 will be the fourth element. A4 will be the fifth element, and the last element of the array will be A5. Now, once we declare an array, then it is necessary to assign the values to these elements of the array. When we assign values to the elements of the array, then that is being called as array initialization. Suppose I want to initialize this array, that is, I want to assign some values to each element of the array. Then it can be done like this. This is my array A, of which the type is integer and the elements are 6. So I will write it like this: integer A6 is equal to, in the curly bracket, you need to mention 6 values. So 5, first value, then put a comma, then second value 12, then put a comma, and like that you can write the 6 values. So you will find that this 5 value will be assigned to A0, then this 12, the second value, will be assigned to A1, this 21, the third value, will be assigned to A2, and in this way the last value 08 will be assigned to element A5. Now if you have declared an array and if you have initialized it, that is, you have assigned some values to the elements of the array, then you can access the elements of the array. And for making an access to the elements of the array, what you need to do is that you need to make use of a for loop. So I will write here a for loop to make an access to the elements of the array. So for, in the bracket, the initialization I is equal to 0, I is a control variable, then semicolon. Now I know that there are 6 elements, therefore I will put the condition here I less than 6. Then again a semicolon, and then I will increment the value of I by 1 every time. And then in the body of the loop, what we are doing is that we are printing just the elements of the array. So the first element, that is element in the square bracket %d. So the value of I will be printed over here. Initially the value of I will be 0. So element 0 is equal to the first element, that is 5, will be printed. Then element 1 will be 12, element 2 will be 21, and in this way the last element will have a value 08, and all such values will be printed by using this printf function. And finally, you need to close this curly bracket for the for loop. So this is a syntax that is being normally used for making an access to the array elements. So you will find that we are making the use of index variable for making an access to the elements of the array. So here I that we have written, this is being called as the index variable of the array, and name of the array is A. Now let us go for another type of the array, and this is being called as a two-dimensional array. Like one-dimensional array, whenever we want to use any two-dimensional array within a program, then it should be declared first. Now the declaration syntax is similar to that of one-dimensional array with only one change. You will find that the firstly we have to write down what is the data type of the elements of the array, because all array elements should be of the same data type. Then we have to write the name of the array. Any valid variable can be the name of the array. Then here in the first square bracket, we will write the size 1. The size 1 will refer to the size of the rows. And in the second square bracket, we will write the size 2. The size 2 will refer to the number of columns. Say for example, I want to make any use of an array A. So A is the name of the array. Let us suppose that all the elements are of integer data type, and the number of rows are 3 and the number of columns are 12. Number of columns are 4. So you will find that this is the array, and this array will contain 3 rows and 4 columns. So you will find that there will be in all 12 elements in this array. So the first element will be A00. The row wise, the second element will be A01. The third element will be A02, and the fourth element will be A03. And in the second row, the row number will now change to 1. Therefore, the first element from the row 1 will be A10. Second element will be A11, and third element will be A12, and the last element will be A13. And in the third row, the row number will change again, and it will now become 2. So the first element will be A20, then A21, then A22, and finally A23. Now, whenever we declare an array, you will find that the compiler will reserve these many memory locations in the memory for the array. Now, once the array is declared, we need to assign the value to the array elements. And assigning values to the array elements is being called as array initialization. In two-dimensional array, we can initialize the array elements like this. Initially, we have to write down what is the data type of the array, then name of the array. Then in the first square bracket, we have to write down the row size, and in the second bracket, we need to write down the column size. Then in the curly bracket, again we will be making use of a curly bracket. So the first curly bracket will indicate the first row elements. So 5, 12, 21, and 32. So this 5 will be the value of A00. This 12 will be the value of A01. And in this way, this 21 will be the value of A02, and 32 will be the value of A03. Then we have to put a comma. Then again in the curly bracket, we need to write down the 4 elements of the row 1. Then put a comma. And then in the third curly bracket, we need to write down the elements of the row 2. So you will find that this 34 will be the value of A20, and this 21 will be the value of A23. Now, once the array is declared and it is initialized, then you can make an access to the elements of the array. Again, to make an access to the elements of the array, we need to make use of for loop. But since this is a two-dimensional array, we will be needing two for loops. The first for loop will be for row number, and the second for loop will be for column number. So in this example, since our array is a 3x4 matrix having 3 rows and 4 columns, therefore here we will set the condition for first for loop I less than 3, and for the second for loop j less than 4. And finally, what we are doing is that we are just printing the number of elements, that is the values of the elements in the array. So here we are printing all integer values. So first of all, the value of I will be printed over here, then the value of j, and then equal to sign, and then the actual value of the element aij will be printed. So you will find that all these values which are being assigned as the array elements, these values will be printed by using this loop. So always remember that whenever you want to make an access to the two-dimensional array element, you will be requiring two such loops. For one-dimensional array, we will require only one loop, but for two-dimensional array, we will be requiring two such loops. Now let us see one simple example where we can make the use of the array. Suppose we want to calculate the first 20 Fibonacci numbers. Fibonacci number is a special number where every number is actually the addition of the previous two numbers. So let us write down a program in order to perform this job. So we will include the stdio.h file. Then our main function is there, and its return type is integer. And then we are declaring the two variables. The first variable is I, and then we are declaring an array, and the name of the array is Fibonacci itself. And the size of the array is 20 because we want to print 20 numbers, first 20 Fibonacci numbers, and therefore the size of the array is being taken as 20. So here we will be declaring an array. Then we will initialize the first two elements of the array. The first element Fibonacci 0 is equal to 0, and the second number of the array Fibonacci 1 is equal to 1. So the first two numbers are initialized. Then in order to generate the next numbers of the Fibonacci series, we will use one for loop. For I is equal to 2, I less than 20, because our condition is that we want to generate 20 numbers, and we will put an increment of I double plus. Now every Fibonacci number is an addition of the previous two numbers. Therefore I will write a statement Fibonacci I is equal to Fibonacci I minus 2 plus Fibonacci I minus 1. So you will find that the earlier two numbers will be added and the next number will be generated. Now, if I want to make an access to the array elements, and if I want to print these array elements, then again I will use another loop for I is equal to 0, I less than 20, I double plus. And simply here I will print the elements of the Fibonacci numbers. So Fibonacci percentage d equal to percentage d, and initially we will print the value of I, and then we will print the value of array element. So whenever we have any C program, and if you want to execute this C program, then you need to have an appropriate compiler. So if you do not have an installed compiler on your computer system, then you can go online and search for C compiler. You can find a lot of C compilers are available online. You type this program in the editor window, and then when you compile this program or when you run this program, you will get a result something like this. So when the program is executed, you will find that the first number is 0, Fibonacci number. The second number is 1, because these are the two values that we have initialized. And then the next number is generated by making an addition of two numbers. So 0 plus 1 is 1, then 1 plus 1 is 2, then 2 plus 1 is 3, then 5 plus 3 is 8, 8 plus 5 is 13, and like that, you will find that the all 20 Fibonacci numbers are generated. So thank you friends for viewing this presentation. If you have any queries in relation with this topic, then always you can ask these queries by writing to me. So thank you all for viewing this presentation.